Hey everybody, my name is Mike Montgomery, and today I'd like to show you how I built these exposed plywood laminate countertops. I see countertops and tables built like this all the time in trendy coffee shops and cool Pinterest kitchens. They're super cool, really cheap, and easy to make. And what's awesome about today's video is I'm gonna show you the traditional way of making these countertops using a router with a flush trim bit, and I'm also gonna show you a DIY limited tools option using only a circular saw. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started on modern builds. I started by breaking down oversized pieces of 3/4 inch radiata pine plywood with a circular saw and straight edge. Radiata pine is Home Depot's cheapest cabinet grade plywood option, and I like it and use it quite a bit. The only problem is that it does occasionally have a little bit of warp or bend to it, so to fight that tension, I made sure to glue and screw my pieces together so that the bends were going in opposite directions. I made sure I got pretty good coverage with my glue, especially along the edges, and then I could screw my pieces together. Anytime I'm layering plywood, I like using these 1¼ inch cabinet screws that I'll leave linked down in the description. They bite well, and they've got this washer head that really clamps the pieces together. After trimming the countertop to its final width and double checking that I wasn't going to run my saw through any screws, I trimmed my countertop to its final length. Oh, and I should mention that I'm building 2 countertops to test the trim router versus the circular saw for trimming the laminate once it's attached. The white counter, which is the first one that I built, is going to be used to test the trim router, while this narrow second countertop is going to be used to see if the circular saw is good for trimming the laminate. And speaking of laminate, here I am unboxing my Wilson Art 4' by 8' laminate panels in orange. If you're interested in getting solid colors like this, both Wilson Art and Formica brand laminate sheets are available at Home Depot, and you can ship them to store and pick them up for free. And they're really not that expensive. Most sheets are between 40 and 85 bucks. I cut both of my pieces way oversized, that way I could line them up really easy with my countertop blanks. And if this is gonna be your first time doing this, I would recommend doing that as well. So it's standard practice to use rubber cement or contact cement to adhere your laminate to whatever your substrate is. After you apply 2 coats, you want to let the contact cement dry completely on both the laminate and your substrate before you attach the 2 pieces together. This is going to create an instant, permanent bond that's really unique. You just need to be really careful that you don't accidentally touch your pieces together before you have things lined up. I was curious, so I tested both the paintbrush and a paint roller to spread out the contact cement, and I really preferred the 2-inch paintbrush that you see me using here. In other videos or articles, you might find people using dowels as a way of raising the laminate off of the surface of the plywood. But I just stacked together a couple pieces of 3/4 inch plywood to raise them up, and I think this is gonna work a little bit better. Dowels obviously are round, and these are square, so they can't roll away if anything gets moved or shaken around. So I like this idea quite a bit. And even though I've got more than this, I would recommend about a 1/2 inch to a 1 inch overhang. So you don't wanna be wasteful, but definitely be generous. The only real specialty tool that you'll need for this job is what's called a J-roller or a seam roller. This one is available on Amazon. It's very heavy duty, and it's a lot more affordable than other places I've seen in store. As always, the link will be down in the description. But now, we're gonna start from the center, and we're gonna slowly take out all of our riser blocks. That way we can press down the laminate. Just gonna double check my edges. And now once I'm confident everything's where I want it, I'm just gonna press down the center. We don't need a ton of pressure. I just want to make sure that nothing's going to move or shift on me. Then I can move each direction and remove my riser blocks as we go. Perfect. And once again, I'm going to start from the center and work my way to the edges. Ooh, and right here, I've got a bubble of glue. So I'm actually just going to pull that up. There we go, now it's sitting flat, and that should not cause an air bubble. Start from the center and press my way to the edge. And once it's down, we're gonna do the exact same steps using the seam roller with a moderate amount of pressure. and we just want to work any air bubbles that are in the laminate to the edge. One thing I really like about contact cement is that you're not fighting a dry time. You actually need to let the adhesive dry all the way before you even attach the pieces together. But that's awesome because the glue doesn't get on our riser blocks and we can reuse them. Also, it means that I don't have to hurry whenever I'm doing this step. Since my glue's already dry, I can really take my time and make sure and get out any air bubbles that might be here. Even though I really don't see any. Maybe just one right here, so I'll focus on that. And now that everything's nice and flat, I'm just gonna work my edges. So I'm gonna put pressure down on this roller in particular. I'm gonna run it around the border of my laminate. Oh, dang it. Okay, don't do that. Obviously you can tell this is all overhang, but that was a silly mistake. That's okay though, because none of the laminate that we're gonna keep actually got broke. This is all waste, but I think it's important to highlight this and just show you guys to be careful around your edges. Make sure you get a good bond, but don't press too hard past the edge of the plywood. Let's go to the next step. I repeated the exact same steps for the other countertop that I'm making. I applied 2 coats of contact cement on both the laminate and the plywood countertops before attaching the pieces together. And just like before, I had way more overhang than I needed. But aside from that, I'm just gonna let this time lapse run, so enjoy. Really quickly, I'd like to give a huge thanks to this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is the #1 shop for you to build your own website. And the best part is, you need 0 website building experience. Squarespace has a library of built-in designer templates that look incredible right out of the gate. All you need to be able to do is drag and drop files and edit text blocks, and you're on your way to a one-of-a-kind website. Squarespace sites look amazing on desktop, tablet, and mobile devices. That way you're sure to stand out no matter where visitors find you. So to learn more, make sure and follow the link down in the description. That's squarespace.com/modernbuilds to start your free trial. Squarespace is so confident in their service, you can actually build your own test site before entering any of your credit card info. Then, whenever you're ready to launch your first site, make sure and check out using the code ModernBuilds for 10% off your first site. Thanks, Squarespace. For anybody new, this is what you call a flush trim router bit. It's got a ball bearing on the end that references whatever your edge is. Then the actual bit that's cutting above it trims the material flush with the edge you're referencing. It's a pretty cool tool and works awesome for edge banding on plywood, and it's what we're going to be using to trim the laminate with. Really, it's not complicated to use. You just want to make sure that the router is sitting flat with your material. It's also much smoother if you move in a counterclockwise direction. On this shot, I'm trimming laminate on some cabinet doors, but it's a really neat shot that shows how the router bit works really well. You can see the ball bearing riding the edge of the plywood and the flush trim bit just trimming that laminate perfectly smooth. So using this flush trim bit in a trim router worked really well. It's sort of standard operating procedures making laminate counters and tabletops. But if I'm being completely honest, the router is basically my least favorite tool. It's a little unwieldy, and it's easy when you have a bed this small to tilt the router and start cutting out of square or getting a bite. That's why in this video, I want to try cutting the second countertop using the circular saw. I've cut pre-made laminate counters with a circular saw before, and I've gotten really good results, so I'm excited to see how it performs on these DIY laminate counters. I wanted to make sure and prevent chip out on any of the laminate, so I used masking tape everywhere I was gonna cut. I also have a 60-tooth finish blade, and that's going to be the most important factor on whether you get clean cuts. If you have a 24 or maybe even a 40-tooth blade, there's a good chance that you're going to get a little bit of chip out on the corners or on the edge of your laminate, but a 60-tooth or higher blade should give you really good results. After cutting the first edge in one single pass, I decided to do the second edge in 2 passes. That way the circular saw had an easier time with it. It also gave me a really clean, faster cut. So cool discovery, the circular saw actually ended up giving a better result than what we got out of the flush trim bit and the router. Now that could just speak to the quality of the router bit that I used or the quality of the router itself, since it came from Harbor Freight. But like I mentioned earlier, I prefer using the circular saw over the router anyways, so if I had to make a recommendation off of my own preference and the results, I would just recommend using a circular saw and a straight edge. My plywood edges were already pretty smooth, so I sanded with 150 then 220 grit sandpaper. In other videos, I've seen people use what's called a laminate file to ease over the corners, which are pretty sharp, but since I'm already using my random orbit sander, I'm just gonna use it to round off the corners a bit. And that worked really well, and it feels great. I applied 2 coats of water-based polyurethane on the edges, and this cleans up really easily, so I was able to just wipe down the laminate after applying it, and it was perfect. Then I could take my cabinets out to the school bus tiny house that I'm working on, and I could install them in the kitchen. Now, if you're not already, make sure and click the subscribe button down below, that way you can stay updated when I post the DIY kitchen video in this series. It'll be in your feed, but I'll also be sure to leave a link down in the description of this video once it goes live. All in all, I love how these countertops came out. They're an awesome DIY solution, they're super affordable, and they're gonna hold up great in this bus. So I hope you all enjoyed the video and feel more comfortable giving some countertops like this a try. This project was a ton of fun and I love the way they look. Not to mention, it is the coolest thing being able to have a finish with no brush marks, no roller marks, and be super durable. If you're interested in seeing how I built this entire kitchen space in the school bus tiny house conversion that I'm working on, make sure and follow the link down in the description so you can check that out. That video should be coming out next week. If you want to keep up with me in between YouTube videos, you can follow me at Modern Builds on Instagram. I'm posting all the time. Thanks again for all the support, and make sure and click the subscribe button to stay updated when I post new videos. And until next time, this has been Modern Builds. Bye everybody.